Okay, we're going to talk about the end of empires. And this is from Daniel 7. You can see the influence in the green there, the pale green. That's what Egypt consisted of then. And arriving in Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, the captain of the king's guard, in whose service he remained for 10 years. He was in the midst of idolatry. The worship of false gods was surrounded by all the pomp of royalty, supported by the wealth and culture of the most highly civilized nation then in existence. Yet Joseph preserved his simplicity and his fidelity to God. Potiphar's confidence in Joseph increased daily, and he finally promoted him to be a steward with full control over all his possessions. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand. And he knew not aught he had, save the bread for which he did eat. So, and Joseph attributed all his success to the favor of God, and even his master accepted this as a secret to their prosperity. And then leaving Egypt, the people, by the direction of Moses, claimed a recompense for their unpaid labor. The Egyptians were all too eager to be freed from their presence to refuse them. They just said, take the money and run. Good riddance. And remember all the plagues they'd suffered? Well, that day completed the history revealed to Abraham in prophetic visions centuries before, where it says, thy seed shall be a stranger in land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. And afterward shall they come with great substance. And it came to pass the selfsame day that the Lord did bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their armies. The 400 years had been fulfilled. As we look back at these empires, keep this in mind what Proverbs tells us. These 6 things that the Lord hate, yea, 7 are abomination unto him. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, and heart that devises wicked imaginations, feet that be swift in running to mischief, a false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among the brethren. So, I don't know, do you think an abomination is just a minor transgression, minor offense, a tiny little sin? I think abomination means much more than that. So let's look at James chapter 2, verse 10 says, for whoever shall keep the whole law, and yet in one point be guilty of all. As we go through the study, ponder how many of these abominations were characteristic of this world power, and was it the root of their end? So we're going to look at Egypt. Wealth poured into his treasury, allowing the pharaohs to build the massive temples and gigantic statues of themselves, some of them 60 feet in height. Do you think today's leaders waste money on trivial things? I don't know. The priestly elite controlled 30% of the nation's land, giving them a disproportionate share of the nation's output and income. And the latest, and I'm not suggesting that we distribute the wealth. That's not, we're just looking at greed and what's fair. Did you know that in the 1930s, 1 in 5 or 20% of people worked on 7 million farms? In 2019, only 1% of the U.S. population are farmers on less than 2 million farms, and we are expected to feed the world. The latest statistics in, I think, 2018-19 said 50% of the fresh fruits imported, vegetables 20%, 90% of seafoods imported from all over the world. You have to wonder, is that safe? I don't know. That's why we're supposed to grow our own, right? Now, ruling an empire also required a larger army. The Egyptians increasingly were forced to rely on foreigners, mercenaries, and even captured enemy soldiers to fill out their ranks. The cost of maintaining the military was a major expense for Egypt to bear, even in peacetime. And did you realize that in 2017, the U.S. had 200,000 troops or military presence in 170 different countries? Now, is this a drain on the economy, or does it provide jobs? I don't know. You tell me. Egyptian cities also had an influx of wealth and new people. It also meant the influx of foreign ideas, some good, some not so good. So we can thank the early Egyptians, though, for gathering knowledge in many fields of science, mathematics, architecture, farming, irrigation, etc. The Egyptian doctors used drugs and herbs to treat different sicknesses, also set broken bones, and sewed up cuts. Egyptians were the first to specialize in the field of medicine and wrote the very first medical books. And of course, they were excellent embalmers. But of all nations presented in Bible history, Egypt most boldly denied the existence of a living God and resisted his commands. No monarch ever ventured more upon open and high-landed rebellion against the authority of heaven than did the king of Egypt. When the message was brought him by Moses in the name of the Lord, Pharaoh proudly answered, "Who is Jehovah, that I should hearken unto his voice and let Israel go? I know not Jehovah, and moreover I will not let Israel go." This is atheism, and the nation represented by Egypt will give voice to a similar denial of the claims of the living God, and would manifest a like spirit of unbelief and defiance. The great city is also compared spiritually to Sodom. The corruption of Sodom and breaking the law of God was especially manifested with licentiousness. And this sin was also to be a preeminent characteristic of the nation that should fulfill the specifications of this scripture. Now, what is this word licentiousness? What does it mean? This is from Webster's 1828 dictionary. It says excessive indulgence of liberty, contempt of the just restraints of law, morality, and decorum. Law is the God of wise men. Licentiousness is the God of fools. So what's happened to God's law, his statutes, his precepts? Is that really freedom? In Leviticus 18, we're told, "Ye shall do my judgments and keep mine ordinances, to walk therein. I am the Lord your God. Ye shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, which if a man do, he shall live in them. I am the Lord." Now, some people claim to be Christians, but they are walking the way the Lord's asked. We need to watch for the wolves in sheep's clothing. Remember, be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Now, another question. Are we going to live by the whole Bible or just the parts we like? What was nailed to a cross? Let's go to Leviticus chapter 20. "And the man that committeth adultery with another man's wife, even he that committeth adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. The man also lie with mankind, as he lieth with a woman. Both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them." Remember, these aren't my words, these are God's words. And he's the one that will execute the punishment. Same-sex marriage is now legal in at least 20 countries and counting. And don't get me wrong, this is not hate speech here. I'm just repeating what the creator of the universe and everything in it has commanded and not suggested. We remain silent, that is sin by omission. In other words, we appear to approve if we don't speak up, while we still can. We're commanded to love the sinner, but not the sin. All right? In every age, transgression of God's law has been followed by the same result. In the days of Noah, when every principle of right doing was violated and iniquity became so deep and widespread that God could no longer bear with it, the decree went forward: "I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth." In Abraham's day, the people of Sodom openly defied God and his law. And there followed the same wickedness, the same corruption, the same unbridled indulgence that had marked the antediluvian world. The inhabitants of Sodom passed the limits of divine forbearance, and there were kindled against them the fire of God's vengeance. In the time preceding the captivity of the 10 tribes of Israel was one of similar disobedience, of similar wickedness. God's law was counted as a thing of naught, and this opened the floodgates of iniquity upon Israel. "The Lord hath a controversy with the inhabitants of the land," Hosea declared, "because there is no truth, nor mercy, nor knowledge of God in the land. By swearing and lying and killing and stealing and committing adultery, they break out, and blood touches blood." Remember, one of the first things Hitler did when he was in power was burn books, and especially the Bible. Okay, now we're going to Daniel chapter 7, verse 3 through 7. We're going to look at 4 empires God has used for his purpose. And Keith brought that up this morning, that we have to go by what God has planned. It's not our choice. He's in charge. And four beasts, great beasts, came up from the sea, diverse from one another. The first was like a lion, had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from off the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man. The man's heart was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear. It raised up itself on one side, and had three ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it four wings of a fowl. The beast also had four heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns. We'll look at these beasts one at a time and study the cause of their collapse. Now, who was the first beast that was represented? It was Babylon, of course. Now, the Babylonian Empire began as a religious, cultural center on the Euphrates River, located about 50 miles south of modern Baghdad, Iraq. Their location provided them a surplus of resources and a centralized government established to collect taxes and provide structure and support for citizens. Their invention of the steelyard scale allowed precious metals to be accurately weighed, providing the means to operate an economy based on coinage. This led to great economic advancements such as banking systems, loans, contracts, and leases. They were excellent bricks makers and master astronomers and clockmakers. Their love of science introduced basic concepts of medicine, including diagnosis, physical exams, and medical prescriptions. As riches were achieved through technological advancements and economic trading success, large government-sponsored building projects were started. Resources were squandered building wasteful, unnecessary objects. Buildings were designed with lavish decoration. Some played with zinc and gold. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon were reported to have been built by King Nebuchadnezzar in order to please his wife, with walls 22 feet thick. It required massive amounts of scarce water, up to 8,200 gallons a day, to maintain the complicated irrigation system required to sustain the abundant plant life that grew in its walls. And we talked about what happened to listen to your wife earlier at the Sabbath school. So, and it was one of the seven wonders of the world. So, what is it now? It's as greeds and suspicion took hold, there was a reduction in literacy and culture. As expected, morals declined. And don't forget what Nebuchadnezzar did. We need to don't forget pride. Don't say, look what I've done. Okay. And ironically, despite the United States having the second best education system globally, it consistently scores lower than many other countries in benchmarks such as math and science. According to the Business Insider report in 2018, its education ranking was 38th in math scores and 24th in science. The United States education rankings have been falling by international standards over the past 3 decades as the government has decreased funding by 3%. So, is education important? Yep. Most countries, have vocational programs because we can't all be doctors. So, you see a pattern developing here. The United States was first in the world as recent as 20 years ago, said Barry McGaugh. But let's keep this in mind from counsels to teachers. The most essential lessons for teachers and students to learn are those which point not to the world, but from the world to the cross of Calvary. Babylon, with all its power and its magnificence, the like of which our world has never since beheld, power and magnificence which to the people of that day seemed so stable and enduring. How completely has it passed away, as the flower of the grass has perished. So perishes all that has not God for its foundation. Now, listen to this. This is from Ambassador Henry Grunwald, his lecture, The Rise and Fall of Ancient Civilization. He said, for freedom to be workable as a political system, there has to be strong inner controls. There has to be a powerful moral compass and sense of values. America, obsessed with its influence and indulging in its luxuries and freedoms, lost its inner control and spiraled into decline. This started a drastic absence of morality and will at some point affect the entire society and inevitably bring about its downfall. Wow, that's harsh. But do we see morality eroding? Traditional families are passe, mass murders are commonplace, anything goes in the media. The more shocking, the better. Whatever sells, that's the ticket. And, I'm sorry we have to go to these dark places. Good news is coming. Just stay with me for a while, okay? Because you sure left us some wonderful promises, also some warning of things to come. Can't stick our heads in the sand and pretend the signs aren't right in our face. Someone's at the door knocking, and shall we let him in? Now, historian Will Durant pointed this out. There's no significant example in history before our time of society successfully maintaining moral life without the aid of religion. The importance of religion to a civilization's continued existence cannot be underestimated. History has shown that when a society becomes morally corrupt, the nation slides toward collapse. Citizens see the degradation of morals as freedom, rules that restricted their behavior. Decline in morals is often slow and subtle and unrecognized by the civilization. Now, folks my age and older can probably testify to that. And then just take a look at Woodstock. Yeah, it was love and peace and music. Millions of people showed up. But let's go back to there. Uh, Medo Persia. He raised up on one side with 3 ribs in his mouth. Now, before the Babylonian exile even began, God warned Jeremiah, and these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. It shall come to pass when 70 years are accomplished, I will punish the king of Babylon. A great nation, saith the Lord, for their iniquity in the land of the Chaldeans, and he will make it perpetual desolation. No more hanging gardens, just sand, just like he said. Now, Ezra and others recorded that in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, about 539 BC, in order to fulfill the word of the Lord spoken by Jeremiah, the Lord moved the heart of Cyrus. And Cyrus allowed all the Jews to return to Judah. Not only did Cyrus release the Jews, but he also returned the stolen temple articles and paid for the Jews' rebuilding efforts from the royal treasury. This was a monumental time in Israel's history. Jerusalem and temple rebuilt, and the law was reinstituted. Another key element in the history of Israel also occurred in Persia. The book of Esther describes the origin of the Feast of Purim and how the Jews were spared mass destruction. God uses individuals and empires to accomplish his will. The Persian Empire is a case in point. God used this empire to set his captive people free. Fund the rebuilding, encourage his children that they were never forsaken. At one point in history, the Persian Empire ruled over 44% of the populated lands, more than any other before or since. But this spread the military so thin, controlling all this territory became impossible. And that leads us to the leopard with 4 wings, Greece. The third beast of Daniel 7 was a leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads, indicating how swift the Greek conquest would be, and that the 4 heads were the 4 generals of Alexander the Great. On his death, they would provide the land 4 ways, each to rule independently. And by the way, you know what brought down that mighty empire? Alcohol. And this will make it easier, much easier for the beast number 4, which Daniel describes as dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly. It had great iron teeth, devoured and break in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. It was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. And of course, we're talking about Rome. In his book, The History of Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, Gibbons listed at least 8 basic reasons for the destruction of the enormous Roman Empire. What lessons can be applied to our modern world powers? Let's see. Number 1, morality. Dramatic increase of the diverse, undermined institution of family. Crimes of violence made the streets of larger cities unsafe. The most popular amusement watching gladiatorial combats in the Colosseum. The drive for personal pleasure had become an obsession. That was then, This is now. That was then. This is now. So the next thing we talk about is public health. There were many public health and environmental problems. Alcohol use increased as well, adding to the incompetency of the general public. The Roman Empire had extended so far that diseases from other lands could easily make their way back to Rome. Resistance to those diseases were weak. Can you think of some diseases that we've had? The avian flu, Ebola, AIDS, West Nile, smallpox, corona, whatever you want to call it. You could add drugs, prescription or illegal, to that. Today, they think that maybe 30% of the U.S. population uses alcohol. Now, next, this one we don't want to really talk about, but we have to, because this brought down Rome. Political corruption. One of the most difficult problems was choosing a new emperor. Romans never created an effective system to determine how new emperors should be selected. Hidden conspirators were working within the government to secretly destroy it. They worked quietly, invisibly, and deceitfully. They were secretly dismantling the government, publicly proclaiming their unswerving support for it. People lost their faith, both religiously and in their government. The efficient Roman government gave way to chaos and disintegration. Now let's move on to another problem we have today. During the latter years of the empire, farming was done on large estates called latifundia that were owned by wealthy men who used slave labor. And today it's called agribusiness. And some farms still use illegals to work below minimum wage, and they avoid benefits and taxes. So they're slaves by another name, basically. Now, many farmers could not compete with these low prices and lost or sold their farms. This not only undermined the citizen farmer who passed his values to his family, but also filled the cities with unemployed people. At one time, the emperor was importing grain to feed more than 100,000 people in Rome alone. These people were not only a burden, but also had little to do but cause trouble and contribute to an ever increasing crime rate. Now, this is a few years back, but 35% of the people in the United States were on public assistance, food stamps, and so forth. Uh, what about this? Inflation. The imposition of higher taxes undermined the economic stability and vitality of the empire. Taxes were raised to pay for deficit government spending, to pay for food for all in society, and to pay for government-sponsored activities of diversion, such as circuses and sports. Once the Romans stopped conquering new lands, the flow of gold into the Roman economy decreased. Yet much gold was being spent by the Romans to pay for luxury items. This meant that there was less gold to use for coins. Eventually, salaries had to be paid in food and clothing, and taxes were collected in fruits and vegetables. Okay, how about this? Remember, we're talking about Rome. This is a long time ago. Urban decay. Wealthy Romans lived in domus, or house, with marble walls, floors with intricate colored tiles, and windows made of small panes of glass. Most Romans, however, were not rich. They lived in small, smelly rooms in apartment houses with 6 or more stories called islands. Each island covered an entire block. At one time, there were 44,000 apartment houses within the city walls of Rome. Anyone who could not pay the rent was forced to move out and live on the crime-infested streets because of these cities began to decay. Who knows how many homeless we have today? But at this last reading, 9.3 million kids were on food stamps. Now let's go to something else. This is one of the islands. Inferior technology. During the last 400 years of the empire, the scientific achievements of the Romans were limited almost entirely to engineering and the organization of public services. They built marvelous roads, bridges, and aqueducts. They established the first system of medicine for the benefit of the poor. But since the Romans relied so much on human and animal labor, they failed to invent new machines or find new technology to produce the goods more efficiently. They could not provide enough goods for their growing population. Now, so you have to ask, are we a service society today? They, they were no longer conquering other civilizations and adapting their technology. They were actually losing territory. They could no longer maintain with their legions. So let's talk about military spending. And we're talking about Rome, remember. Maintaining an army to defend the border of the empire from barbarian attacks was a constant drain on the government. Military spending left few resources for other vital activities, such as providing public housing and maintaining quality roads and aqueducts. Now, yeah, it takes money to support an army. And not only that, everyone suffers from war. No one comes out ahead. Agriculture also seems to be an important issue when discussing the decline of world powers, because toward the end of the decline of the Roman Empire, the farms around Rome appeared to be underutilized. And the U.S. has different problems. We have dry earth, we have dust storms, we have floods, we have more floods, we have surges from hurricanes. And this was most work hurricanes I think we've had in 1 year. They ran out of names for them, so they had to use the Greek alphabet. And we're on Xena right now, or Zeta. So, what about snow? Yeah, we get snowed in. We get more tornadoes, tear stuff up. Then in the west coast here, we have fires, and they're all in Colorado now. So American agriculture is taking a big hit from natural disasters, the floods and record low temperatures, extreme drought. There were this year or two ago, the Northwest recorded temperatures usually found in Death Valley, 113 degrees Fahrenheit. So what's going on? Let's look at the statement concerning Israel from the Desire of Ages. All people of the earth, said Moses, shall see that thou art called by the name of the Lord, and they shall be afraid of thee. The nations which shall hear all these statutes shall say, surely the great nations are wise, understanding people. But because of their unfaithfulness, God's purpose could be wrought out only through continued adversity and humiliation. Now, the question is, does this apply only to ancient Israel, or are we seeing history repeated today before our very own eyes? I know some people are going to say, well, you're being unpatriotic because, but let me say this, my first loyalty is to Almighty God and Jesus Christ, his son. So be it. Yes, I love this country and my father and my brother, and I volunteered for the Vietnam conflict, so I don't want to hear about it. Okay? Don't hate on me. Just think about Ezra and Jeremiah. Think how much they were hated because of what they said. Now, God has revealed his law, the principles that underlie all true prosperity, both of nations and of individuals. This is your wisdom and your understanding. Moses declared to the Israelites of the law of God. It's not a vain thing for you because it is your life. The blessings thus assured to Israel are on the same conditions and to the same degree assured to every nation and every individual under the broad heavens. Now, I saw this just a couple of days ago. It really shook me up. Vladimir Putin said that America's global dominance is coming to an end, with the U.S. itself accelerating that process with a string of mistakes, typical of an empire. The Russian president criticized the U.S. for implementing sanctions against Russia and other nations, arguing that doing so undermined trust in the dollar as the world's universal currency. The Russian president has painted his nation as leading a new world order. We've heard about that. As a rising China, along with BRIC nations, Brazil and India, gain equal footing. Thank God this situation of an unpolar world or monopoly is coming to an end, Putin said. It's practically already over. The history of nations that one after another have occupied their allotted time and place, unconsciously witnessing to the truth of which they themselves knew not the meaning, speaks to us. To every nation, to every individual today, God has assigned a place in his great plan. Today, men and nations are being measured by the plummet or plumb bob, the hand of him who makes no mistake. All are by their own choice deciding their destiny, and God is overruling all for the accomplishment of his purposes. So, are we on the up and up? Are we standing straight? Are we being the true measure? Um, Yeah, this may be ridiculous, but some people are going to be scoffing at the prophecies. But does "as in the days of Noah" ring a bell? You know, um, and don't be discouraged because Yeshua has things under control. We got to look to the future. We're told patriarchs and prophets, a great plan of redemption results in fully bringing back the world to God's favor. All that was lost by sin is restored. Not only man, but the earth is redeemed to be the eternal abode of the obedient. For 6,000 years, Satan has struggled to maintain possession of the earth. Now God's original purpose and his creation is accomplished. The saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Now that's a long time. Okay. So Shabbat Shalom.